So whatever I do, I will always try to do more than is necessary.
Welcome back to another episode of the Directors Club podcast, brought to you by Cumbria Chamber of Commerce. In this series, we get to explore some of the most interesting characters, directors and leaders from Cumbria, and on occasion, beyond. The Directors Club is kindly sponsored by Rachel Bell Wealth Management and Muckle LLP. Today, I'm here with the wonderful Caroline Langham from Eve Halliday District Weddings. She's got such an interesting story, she's so full of energy, and she really is a wedding angel. So let's get into it. Do you want to tell me a little bit about Courthouse?
A little bit about Courthouse. Well, Courthouse 500 years old. How far back would you like me to go? Since 2006 when we took over?
Yes, go from 2006.
Okay, so we started out Courthouse back in 2006 as it was nothing really. It was an occasional B&B and a home. It wasn't a thriving business as such. And we took over that as a B&B, old B&B. First thing we did was set to renovating the place. It needed completely rewiring, it needed overhauling. And so we couldn't open the B&B until the Easter time. So in the interim, we decided it would be a grand idea to open it up as a tea room, to get loads of footfall in, to get people in, to have a feel of the house, with the idea that they'd be coming back to book us for B&B, which is exactly what they did. And I'm still getting customers today that come back and get married here from the tea room.
Amazing.
And I'll say, it's me, I just had dark hair back then. Oh, wow. And we sat here in this corner and they can remember what they had to eat. It's really quite amazing, isn't it? After 18 years, people still coming back.
Still keep coming back.
Yeah, so we started out as a B&B in a tea room. And then back in 2013, I think I got licensed. In fact, we started planning it the year before. So 2012, I decided that I wanted to move back into the area that I had most of my expertise in, which was weddings. So I decided to get licensed for weddings, which is what we did. And I think it took so long to get all the things in place, tick all the boxes, get the licenses in place. It was 2013 by the time we got licensed to do weddings. And we started out very small, just with the house. And then people wanted more space. So we then renovated the barn the same year. So by October 2013, we were working on the barn. So we put in everything that you see today. So a lot of renovation work. So the weddings completely changed and pivoted the business. We couldn't run all three businesses together, although we did try, and I did do that for a whole year. That was hard work. And in the end, as the weddings started to come in, that's when we sort of decided that we'd have to close down the B&B, focus on the weddings, and definitely close down the tea room because the two things just conflicted each other.
Yes, I can't imagine this.
I'm just looking for a cup of tea. Excuse me, just got a wedding going on here. So you can imagine. Yeah, people doing their I-dos and people like lugging, walking gear, lugging their rucksacks through the garden. So yes, we had to then sort of, put signage up and ask people to not come in the tea room anymore, which was so sad because, to be honest, it just grew such a great reputation, the tea room, that I was asking people not to come in for like a good 7 years. It took a long time for the word to actually get out. And I felt so bad because people, we'd run the tea room for so long that people sort of planned it as part of their walk round ride, or that they'd stop at the tea room and then it was like, oh, I'm so sorry. So yeah, that was quite difficult actually, turning things away. But there you go. To make way for the weddings.
But it's predominantly weddings that you do now.
100%.
100% weddings.
Yes.
7 days a week?
Nope. I don't do weddings on Sundays.
Don't do weddings on Sundays. Good.
So we've never really had much call for weddings on Sundays, to be perfectly honest, and I keep my Sundays sacrosanct. So I do have my Sundays off, and I don't work on Sundays.
Good.
And now I don't make any excuses about it. That's something that happened during lockdown. So from 2020 onwards, I think more for mental health reasons than anything else, it was definitely, you are not turning the computer on a Sunday. So I had to find something else to do. So I learned to paint. So I started watercolor painting on Sundays, and that way it kept me away from the computer, because I find my work creative. I love it. So I just needed a different outlet. And then I now look forward to having my days off, and they are purely days off. So yes, I'm very, very happy that we have Sundays off, and we've never really been asked for weddings on Sundays. Yeah. So that works well. Yeah.
Great. Okay, so let's go right back to the very beginning. So you said most of your history was in weddings, but let's go right back to the very beginning. Where are you from?
Ah, you see, can you not guess?
No, I'm
a lot
terrible
of people
with accents.
A lot of people can't quite. Some people can pick up a little bit of the lingo. I'm actually from Lancashire. She's classed as Greater Manchester now, but I'm from a town called Ashton in Makerfield, which is just sort of around the Wigan area, in between Manchester and Liverpool. And that's where I grew up until I was 21 years old. I went to school there, high school there, very settled family life, and didn't go to university. I wanted to be a fashion designer, and I was absolutely adamant I was going to be a fashion designer against everybody's advice. My mum was a wonderful, wonderful dressmaker, seamstress, and I grew up helping mum do all kinds of creative things, and that's all I wanted to do. So I said, no, I'm not doing A-levels, I'm not going to university, I want to go to fashion college, and that's exactly what I did. So I went to fashion college in Wigan, at Wigan Tech, which is gone now, unfortunately, but the old building's gone, should I say. So I did fashion design and textiles straight from school, 16 to 18, and I did a day tech diploma. Absolutely loved it. So I did that full time for a couple of years. Then I decided that I'll have a little dabble at Art Foundation. I'll have a look at going to university now. I'll do a degree in it. So I had a look at Loughborough, Manchester. Where else did I go? I might have gone to Newcastle. I can't remember. To do fashion design degree. They wouldn't take me on because I'd already covered the syllabus in my day tech diploma, and all the qualifications that I got already were the kind of qualifications that I would have studied in a degree course. So I was a bit of a stumbling block, to be honest. So I was working in a place called Quicksave part-time as a student.
I remember Quicksave.
Quicksave, do you remember those?
Yeah.
I sell them cheap on a fruit and veg stall. So I used to weigh out potatoes on a weekend. So that was my little sideline. And I remember just thinking, oh, what am I going to do now if I don't go to university? Anyway, I found a job. But that was right. I got invited back to the course at Wigan. They'd extended it to do a third year. Would I like to go back because they'd brought on this other course? So I think I said, yep, I'll go back there and decide what I'm going to do. As part of the, work placement, I had to go around lots of factories. So to do some work experience, as you do. During one of those visits, I happened upon, and you go all the way around the manufacturing factory from start to finish, and I happened upon a place called Work Study. Do you know what that is?
No, I don't.
Back in the day, when you used to have to, you'd be in piecework, so it was always in the rag trade because it was always to do with fashion, and it was a factory in Lee, I think it was at the time. And it was basically making up garments, and that was broken down into very, very small parts. So you'd have predominantly on sewing machines doing very small jobs, 2 or 3 minutes long. Then it would pass down the line and they would do another job. So one person would stitch the shoulders, one person would stitch the sides, different things, different machinery, different workstations, and that was piecework. And you would only get paid for what you did. So that was all measured by the time study team in the work study department. And I found this quite fascinating because although I'm creative, I'm also very logical. So although I did fashion design, I found it really tricky because actually I wasn't that free with my art. I was very technical. So I could imagine, it's a bit like technical drawing. I could imagine a fabric and I could imagine a drape and I could imagine the pattern and putting together the pattern, and I was very expert at pattern cutting. And so that logical side for me was great. So I really used to struggle with go out, get some inspiration, do some mood boards, do these feely, touchy, arty things, come up with some designs, select one, take it forward. Nah, I'd decide what I wanted to do. I'd see a vision in my mind, I'd make it, and then I'd draw it and say, well, I'd do it backwards, basically.
Yeah.
Fulfill the brief by doing that bit at the end. So I was very much a technical kind of. So my technical brain loved the work study department, and that was all about efficiency, speed, doing things as quickly as you can, just in time philosophy, all of these Japanese and American kinds of things. So I loved it. So I then got a job doing work study in a jacket manufacturer's in Wigan called Bagia. So that was my very first job. I think I was on, I don't know, was it 70 pence an hour?
Amazing.
Yep. So that was my full-time job for 2 years until I was 21. And then, so I learned a lot in that area. So we were making suits for Eve Saint Laurent, British Airways uniforms, things like that. Very complex gentlemen's fitted blazers, jackets with over 300 operations in a jacket. Learned so much in that job. And during that time, they sent me to college to learn Institute of Management Services, certificate and diploma. So I did 2 years. I was in my 3rd year when I left that job because I was headhunted to go and work for Courtaulds Textiles. So they wanted me to move to Nottingham, which is what I did when I was 21, to take up a job with them. And they called it industrial engineering. So you might have heard of that.
Yes.
It's similar to the work study that I'd done. So the basis of it is work study. It was just an updated terminology, plus, I suppose, a broader spectrum. So I was doing project management, working in the industrial engineering department. I was doing management auditing, but it was all based around speed, efficiency, materials handling, ergonomics, team working, cellular working, just-in-time philosophies. And I was working for Courtaulds Textiles, their head office, which was based in Manchester, at Walkden in Manchester back at the day. But I was seconded out to various companies. So I ended up going to a company that used to manufacture fully fashioned knitwear. So I went from a making up environment, which is where you're sewing, so you're cutting pieces out and sewing, to actually a massively male-dominated industry, using fully fashioned knitwear, where one man would perhaps run 21 different knitting machines with 21 different heads, all knitting a particular shape. It was very, very skilled, very, very industrial kind of environment. And that's where I was thrown in at the deep end to make me learn the other end of the scale, if you like. And during that time, I was sent to continue my studies. And then I did a DMS at Derby University, which is a postgraduate qualification. And I basically just followed whatever job career I could get where they'd educate me more, but still working and doing what I wanted to do. So I worked with Courtaulds for a number of years before being made redundant, as many people were back in the early 90s. So I was with them, had my first house, bought my first house down there, and I absolutely loved it. So I was made redundant, probably, how old would I have been? 27, 28, maybe. And so it was a bit of a blow. And I bought myself a sewing machine, and I was really excited because I'm going to set myself up in business. And I've been self-employed ever since with my sewing machine.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
So I worked for 2 companies in my life. That was my total. But I learned so much, and having done the DMS, which was a diploma in management studies, and I know that a lot of people haven't heard of it. It was quite an intense part-time postgrad degree. And it was only 1 year short of an MBA. And I think the one thing that I would have liked to have done would have been to continue. But I got made redundant, so I never finished. So to do my MBA. So yeah, I learned a lot about business management, strategy, a lot more about HR. Oh, in between as well, I did a couple of HR qualifications because they decided that along with running the industrial engineering department, I should also have a look at the training and development department. So I was sent off to Manchester to do intense courses on training and development. So that always helps. It's nice to have that in your arsenal as well. I just forget the number of courses that I've done, but I soak up courses. I love them. So I still do courses now, and I have a coach, and I'm constantly learning. So yeah.
You should never stop learning, should you?
Oh no, absolutely not. I'm inquisitive. I like to learn. I like to know how to do it myself. I like to be able to have the flexibility to be able to edit and do whatever I need to do. A bit like you're editing stuff, you're doing quite a lot. It's creative, but you just want that. I want to know how to do it. So I know what I did then when I was made redundant. I think I had about a year trying to build a business, and I started out doing curtains for people. Curtains, and back in the day it was all swags and tails, and everybody wanted really, really posh full length curtains, and I would go around to houses in Nottingham and measure up for people and do bespoke sketches and then present whatever it was. So a bit of interior design, really. I love that. I love those programs as well, don't you? Interior design.
I remember, like, back in the 90s, it was amazing, wasn't it? Where everyone had these huge fancy curtains with peplums along the top and swags and then tie backs. And if it was in a bedroom, I remember a friend with a very swanky house, and they had matching like bed cover things that went over all the bed. And yeah, it was all very in vogue at the time.
Yeah. All the upholstery to match, all quite chintzy now when you look back, I suppose, but the principles are still the same. And then I moved on to doing bespoke ladies wear. So the same ladies that were buying my curtains would then be interested in bespoke clothes for themselves. So I was doing that for them, going to the houses. So I didn't want people to come to my house. I didn't have a shop or anywhere, or a workshop. So that's how I started for a couple of years. And then I decided that I was doing so much work creating blocks for clients and then creating patterns that it just made sense that I moved into wedding dresses. That was going to be where people would really pay what the price it had to be really for that kind of service. And so I started doing wedding exhibitions, still working from home. And my husband made me these stands that you could sort of erect and take down, and it was all done homemade. How we started with no money, which is quite incredible. And then I built a following of people that would come to see me from all over Nottinghamshire, come to my house, get the dog out of the way, tidy up, whatever.
Yes, there, we're going to fit you for your wedding dress.
It was a bit embarrassing. It was really, I couldn't wait to get my own premises. Anyway, cut a long story short, I then had a golden retriever because I was working from home, my first dog. And then my first child a couple of years later. By the time I was on to my second child, so this was 1997, I was actually expecting my second child when I opened my first shop, and that was a bridal wear shop in Nottingham. And from that shop, I was there for 8 years, till we moved here in 2006. Basically, I ran a bridal wear shop. So I started the bridal wear shop, and it was called the Wedding Wardrobe. And I basically used to do made-to-measure bridal wear for many people all over the country. I used to exhibit at the NEC, big exhibitions then. I was actually on the clothes show and used to have my stuff put on the catwalks down there at the NEC. So it was lovely, really creative, and learned a lot about business, obviously, having a shop, having staff. My first staff was a professional pattern cutter who worked beside me. We also retailed designer wear as well as lower end stuff. A lot of accessories, dance wear. So the local kids used to come in for their ballet slippers. It was so cute on a Saturday morning. So I used to have people come from all over to do that. And a spin-off from that was websites came on in the fore, didn't they? 1997.
They did, yeah.
And I managed to go on a few courses with the Nottinghamshire Chamber, and getting grants and things to learn web design. So I was learning Dreamweaver to design my website back in the day.
Dreamweaver.
Do you remember that?
I haven't heard that for a long time.
That was a long time ago. Photoshop, of course. So I've been photoshopping photos since before I had a mobile phone.
Since Photoshop existed.
Yep. So that's how it started. And so that I had that, the ability to be able to put new creations up on the website, not build a website, I'd have that built, but have the ability to be able to edit.
Yes.
Change things over, because I wasn't going to be paying somebody. I didn't have the funds to pay somebody to be able to do things for me. So everything I did, I had to learn how to do it myself. because I had the time, I didn't have the money. So I did a lot of things to just expand my knowledge, really. So alongside that, I then I built a limited company called Just Brides Limited. And that was to sell bridal wear accessories and bespoke veils, because I employed a second person who was a veil maker, who was an extraordinarily talented lady who hand embroidered veils. And so because we were in a great Catholic community as well, I ended up sidelining as well into doing First Holy Communion veils and First Holy Communion dresses, because they were all related. So all the locals come in and buy from me too. So the Just Brides Limited was an online shop. And so I was also retailing online as well as retailing and making bespoke in the shop. And then we decided to move up here for this. And so it took a bit of whether or not I was going to make that move. So I went from basically literally making silk gowns for £2,500, which back then was a lot of money.
Yeah.
I still have a few upstairs, all handmade, made to measure gowns, to making cakes for a tea room and DIY, a lot of DIY. So it's no surprise that when it comes to the venue decorations and curtains and renovations, DIY, I'm a dab hand at that. Yeah. So my sewing machine is still down there.
It still comes out.
It still comes out. My daughter was here on Sunday. Mum, I've got a little project for you. Can you just shorten these sleeves? But yeah, I still love being creative. My sewing machine's a bit more it's a bit more difficult now because I can't see the eye of the needle so easily now to thread the needle. It takes me longer to thread the needle than it does to do a repair for my daughter. But yes, made all the curtains for here, do a lot of upholstery. So I love it. I just love it. So I suppose doing watercolour, moving into watercolour is not much.
It's just another arm of creativity, isn't it?
Yeah, some people buy my prints, and I sign their wedding certificates when I've witnessed their weddings, for elopement weddings, and I say to everybody, and with a little cheeky smile, I'm signing my signature and saying, "Be very famous one day." That's
yeah, you'll be able to say that was me who saw your wedding, witnessed your wedding.
Yes, absolutely. So so that's, I suppose, come full circle. So I couldn't wait to get back into weddings because I was so used to dealing with brides mothers, having long-term projects going on, delivering something very bespoke and very special. So I suppose it brings everything together, doesn't it? The hospitality and the wedding business. So yeah, it was just a no-brainer for me. Something that I absolutely adore, passionate about.
Absolutely. So what was it at 27 when you were made redundant? What was it that you thought, do you know what, I'm going to buy a sewing machine rather than I'm going to have a look in a paper and apply for another job?
Because I just needed to give it a go. I needed to give myself the opportunity whilst my husband was working and whilst we hadn't got any children and whilst we'd got options. I also found working for some people quite frustrating. Sounds terrible.
I think a lot of entrepreneurs would agree.
Right. So because, you work in a factory environment and you've got your finance department, your HR department, your MD, and sometimes you just think, and I know it's big industry and it's very, very different, but I really couldn't see myself working in the rat race any longer. I found it very, very frustrating. I do believe that I was made redundant, probably because my final project was all about change or resistance to change. And it was very relevant to us, perhaps, at the time. So
there was a lot of resistance to change, and all of a sudden you found yourself redundant. Interesting.
Fabulous. So maybe that was just a little message. I don't know. But so I couldn't see myself working for somebody else. I didn't feel like I was able to grow and follow my dreams and my passions. And I really wanted to be in control of my own destiny and to be able to see where that took me. Because I wanted to be doing something that I was really, really passionate about. But I knew that I'd got a lot of knowledge and I'd gained a lot of knowledge in a very, very quick time, because the situations that I found myself in, in that particular environment, dealing with people's wages, dealing with, you know, pricing up a job, you know, telling somebody, you know, okay, you were given 1.5 minutes, I'm now slashed it to 1.3. Do you know what I mean? So to be so, I was torn. I suppose I was always thrown into, you know, negotiations, if you like, even though we don't negotiate minutes, of course, you only negotiate the rate that's applied to those minutes. That was something that was higher up, but you were always thrown into those kinds of negotiations. And for somebody at 21 years old and female in a very male dominated environment, I had to learn very, very quickly and very much on my feet. I was also, because I was working for the umbrella company, Courtaulds Textiles Limited, and not the small factories where I was working on the ground, I was also part of their auditing team. So I used to travel all over the UK, actually going into the supervisors' offices and the production managers' offices and interviewing them at 21 about what their systems were and testing them and testing their staff, because we used to have a lot of training that would be able to suppose check that people that were qualified to measure jobs were doing it correctly and to the correct standards. And so I would actually go in and audit. Whilst my MD was going in auditing the MD or the HR department, I would be doing the production management department, and we would go away. And companies that we would have then, because we used to work for the brands company of Courtaulds, were things like Lyle & Scott, and Aristoc, the stocking company, and we would go all over the country doing those audits. So because we worked for Courtaulds Textiles, the big group, we would then go into the satellite companies, because Courtaulds was built up of lots of independent companies, all with their own MD. But we would have a very small team at Walkden, and there was only 4 of us, and I was one of them. Go around the country and do that auditing. But I used to sit and watch the HR director of the full Courtaulds, you know, Courtaulds Textiles, and the managing director interview company directors and absolutely really go for it, but with a smile on their face. And I used to be in awe. Oh God, how do you learn the craft of how to actually deliver bad news with a smile on your face, or suggest improvements and that kind of stuff. So I was just soaking it all up. I absolutely loved it. And that level of working with people, you know, so high up in a company and watching them work was just like, it's like an opera to me. I was like mesmerized by it. And that's what I wanted. I didn't want to be working for an MD in a small company, a small satellite company, who actually didn't know as much as me at the time. Do you know what I mean? So I found it really frustrating. So I suppose by the time I'd got to 27 and was working with a particular MD at the time, I'd moved away from Courtaulds, the group, and had taken a job for a satellite company. I was based in Leicester, working for Wolsey Socks at the time. And so, yes, I was made redundant from there, but then it closed down, as most of the factories closed down. So they were trying to streamline, but actually everybody closed down within 12 months. And a lot of that was because a lot of the manufacturing in England, of course, was all put out abroad. So because we were doing contract work for the likes of Marks and Spencer's, British Home Stores, Debenhams, those kinds of companies, a lot of them started sourcing abroad. And that was really part of the demise, wasn't it, of the, you know, the rag trade in the UK, which is sadly very sad. So yeah, support the UK.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, especially those in Cumbria.
Absolutely. Yes.
So what was the change? Why did you come up to Cumbria? If you had your house down there, did you say you were expecting your second child?
No,
and you thought,
that was back in 97.
Oh, right, that was back in 97.
I was expecting her. She was born in 97. So we came up here in 2006. So she was going to junior school. So she went to junior school in Ambleside when we arrived. So why did we come up here? My sister-in-law lived here at the time, and she no longer wanted to continue this lease. She was a business coach, and she didn't run this as a viable B&B business. She inherited it, and she just allowed people to come and go because they were old customers and knew the house, and she perhaps wouldn't even be here on a weekend and would just say, come and help yourself, leave the money on the kitchen table. because she was quite often not around. So she decided she didn't want to continue with the lease because she wanted to relocate down to Worcestershire. And so we had the opportunity to take over the lease. We did say no initially, and then we came up here to help her to do a charity event at the house. That was a lot, don't get me wrong. We used to come up every month and enjoy fabulous parties here.
Yeah.
So she was doing a charitable event for Water for Africa, and she'd organised 3 bands, the local pub, a bouncy castle, all kinds of charity events going on. And we were asked to run the gate, to do the ticket sales on the gate and not allow anybody else in unless they paid a tenner. So we ran an amazing event. She always was very, very gregarious, had a fantastic head on her shoulders for business. And we stood on the gate and we were amazed, Eve. I had spent thousands marketing my business in Nottingham, absolutely thousands, trying to get the marketing right, doing everything right on the website, doing the leaflets, paying money for everything, doing these expensive, exhibitions at the NEC. And I came up here and must have counted 1,000 people walk past the front gate. And I just said, well, a leaflet holder on the gate, it's not going to be hard, is it, to market this business?
No, that's amazing.
And I was like, wow, I didn't realise that many people walked past here, because whenever we'd come in for the weekend, we'd close the gates, come into the house, and you didn't really take any notice of what was going on around us. We were in this protected bubble. And to be honest, back in the day, we were so surrounded by rhododendrons, nobody could see the house and we couldn't see out. It was very different to how it is today. It got so much overgrowth that nobody could see us and nobody took any notice because there was no signage. You just wandered past. So I was just incredibly amazed at how many people walk past it. It's about 10 times more these days than it was back then, So we just rethought it because we'd said no. This was the August. And so we had another little rethink, and then we decided to go for it, came up, had to be interviewed for the lease, etc. And we moved in the following January 2006. So I suppose we decided in 2005 and moved up in 2006. And at the time, my husband was still working in Nottingham. So I was here with my 2 children on my own during the renovations and running a tea room. He would go off he'd be down in Nottingham working full time. He'd come up, grab the shopping for me from the way in, do all of the shop for the whole weekend, for the whole tea room and everything. And then I'd start baking scones on the Saturday. And so I was running it as a B&B on my own and managing the children, and then opening the tea room just at the weekends. And he'd help me run the tea room for 2 days. So he was working 7 days a week, and so was I suppose, back in the day. But that's how you grow, isn't it?
And that's what you do when you first take somewhere on. You go, right, I've just got to do absolutely everything I can to make this work.
Yep. So I developed my scone techniques and I developed my cake techniques, and I had it all down. The kids were coerced into working. So my children will tell you lots of stories about being forced to work, slave labour, child labour. And then we'd have a variety of different staff over the years that we could rely on. But it did start out just as a weekend tea room, and then it would grow to like a Friday to Monday tea room, and then just the holidays. And then it grew to me employing 2 people full time, allowing them to run with it while I focused on the B&B. And they just mushroomed and grew it to a massive business that just suddenly became, wow. So it was very, very much, a good tea room and B&B business. But yes, things started to get a little bit slow. And, we had the crash in 2008, 2009, it limped on. Hospitality wasn't as easy. I mean, the other thing was that when we did it, we were very much into the environmental credentials. We were very much into organics. We realised that we'd only got 3 bedrooms. So although it's a big house with big grounds, we'd got a very limited capacity to be able to get the revenues in. So we decided to focus and I suppose niche down on organic, so that we could make whatever we did the best we could possibly make it. Our ethos was that Coat Hire was going to be an experience, not just a bed for the night. And what we wanted to focus on was the best bed for the night and the best breakfast you could have. And all of that would be organic. So in true Caroline fashion, what did she do? She approached the Soil Association they'd never heard of a B&B wanting to be Soil Association licensed, and they'd never done that before, but they were very intrigued by it. So they came up to visit me, and I was the very first B&B to be organically licensed by the Soil Association, because my husband didn't want any old credentials. He wanted the Soil Association credentials. He was vegetarian, very much into eco, and he wanted it to be proper. So we invited the Soil Association to come and talk to us, and we were licensed with the Soil Association. The tea room was licensed, and I also had a manufacturing license so that I could actually badge my marmalade and my cakes as being organic, and they were sealed with an approval from the Soil Association. That took a lot of work, a hell of a lot of work. And, you know, the red tape, all the things that you had to get right. And I learned so much from them about organics, about, you know, watering plants and farming and how important it was, all of the biodiversity, and also about packaging, being resourceful, being responsible, because you couldn't get your license, you couldn't be organic if you were not using sustainable practices. So it was all part and parcel of it, and that was back in 2006, 2007 and 2008, and we did everything to the best of our ability. So our tea room was licensed as organic, so we did everything proper. So I enjoyed it. It was really, really good. It was a fantastic experience. And
you've never shied away from a challenge then?
No. And because we were also doing environmental things, and we'd met up with Claire at the time, used to run what was called then the Tourism and Conservation Partnership. It then changed to Nurture Lakeland, didn't it? So back then, the first hospitality show that I went to, I bumped into Claire Scott, as she was known at the time. And it was amazing because you could do visitor payback and do all of these projects through your B&B and get your visitors to invest back into Fix the Fells and all those other lovely projects. So we were very interested in doing environmental stuff locally. So we were very much into the red squirrel conservation and balsam bashing, because we had problems with the waterways of balsam and Japanese knotweed. So we used to do a lot of fundraising for those causes, and then volunteering and getting people in. We used to employ BTCV to come in to do, they would do volunteering holidays, but they would be paid supervisors that would have volunteers come and help clear the balsam back in the day. So that's 2006 to 2009. And luckily, there's a bit of balsam now that a few local people have been tackling, but it's nothing like the problems that we used to have. So that was all really exciting. And then we also launched, along with a wonderful guy called John Barwise, Cumbria Green Business Forum, which I don't know whether you ever heard of, but that was something that we did as a joint venture. And we ran that for a number of years, working with the Waterways, the Wildlife Trust, the National Park and the National Trust, doing projects with like the environmental stuff. And then Cumbria Green Business Forum was basically aimed at delivering workshops and training for people. So I used to stand up and tell people what I'd done, how we'd won the first GTBS Gold Award in Cumbria back in 2008. And we were the first people to win the Cumbria Tourism Awards for Sustainability in 2008. But that was all on the back of doing all of this work that we've been doing with BTCV and CGBF. So I really enjoyed doing that. So I was treasurer for them, which is why I ended up doing a video of how you could do sustainable transport in a B&B, videoing my children at Windermere Station, because that's what you do, isn't it? And then
absolutely, creativity.
Bev Dennison, who used to own Broad Rain Farm, was a fantastic ambassador. Nick Lancaster from the Langdale Estate, he was on our committee. We had a fantastic committee of people. The Jacksons, who used to run was it the Lake District, they had Organico, the wine company, and they also had the Lake District cottages. So yeah, lots of great inspiring people that I used to work with. So yeah, loved it, absolutely loved it.
And how does that eco and organic sustainable ethos now bleed into the weddings?
Well, the funny thing is, we don't actually boast about it. We don't do anything. We don't really say too much about it. Yeah, there's a couple of blogs on my website about greening up your wedding and how we only use sustainable confetti, and we have links with companies for petals only and stuff like that. And I do make suggestions about wedding favours. First of all, do you really need them? Do you want them? How you can combine them with place cards, how you can do homemade things, how you can support small local businesses, grass-made gingerbread, for example, great locally sourced biscuit that will get eaten. How about, because I used to think, a lot of tat used to come in through the door, excuse the phrase, and why do you want a piece of plastic with a red rose in it sticking on your table? And I used to question what people were doing. So I learned over the years, if I wrote about it, put a blog out there, started showing a bit of opinion rather than being too shy about showing my opinion, started to attract the people that actually were interested in what I had to say or interested in the background. So we don't advertise that we're necessarily sustainable or eco or whatever, because I think it's all part and parcel of what we do throughout. So I'm very much invested in, sustainable ways of doing everything. So I think that's always been at the core of everything I do, and that's just the way I think now. So I don't necessarily see it as being a separate thing. It's all part and parcel of what we do.
Yeah, it's part of the lifeblood there at Court Howe. And can you remember the first wedding that you did at Court Howe? Was it panic stations, or were you dead excited to do it, or all of the above? How did it go? How did it come about?
It was the very first wedding, because it took about 6 months, of course, to get your first customer. They might book in a wedding and it might be 6 months hence. So from getting licensed to actually delivering a wedding, our first wedding was in December 2013. And I think it was for 26 people, might not have been even that many, actually, it might have been 23. And I remember her name, I remember her dress. She had 2 dresses, and we had to do a back to front wedding. I learned so much on that wedding because we could only get a late ceremony, which was in the dark. But they wanted the food beforehand. And so everything was back to front at that wedding. So it was quite a challenge. And I roped in all my friends to help with that wedding. So Claire, who used to run the TCP, pulling pints behind the bar for me. I had my friend come up from Nottingham to do the photography, and everybody pitched in, and it was lovely, really nice. It was a hot buffet, and we didn't have the barn at that point. So yeah, it was nice. It was all held in the house, and I can remember the flowers, I can remember the layouts, I can remember everything. I was petrified, yes. But yeah, and they didn't know it was my first wedding till afterwards, because you never tell everybody, oh, I've never done this before.
Yeah, this is my first wedding.
Trust me, I'll blag it. But yes, it went down really well. So yeah, and then obviously the year after I had 11, something like that, and then it's grown from there. So yeah.
And how has that growth happened? Has it been really organic, excuse the pun, or have you done loads of advertising? Is it leaflets on the gate?
Oh, it's quite interesting, actually. We've evolved a lot in the last 10 years, so I've learned a lot. Back in the day, I suppose I was advertising wherever I could, or whatever I could afford to advertise, and obviously that was very limited. Leaflets on the gate have always been a great one, and the reason being that the people that are here in the Lake District that are peering over my gate are my ideal customers, and they are here on the spot watching a wedding happen, pick up a leaflet. Oh my word, if there's a bride and groom in the garden, people don't tend to walk by quite so quickly. They want to have a little look over, and then they want to be in there. So yeah, we get a lot of traction from the gate, and those ones tend to be easier to convert as well. So a much higher conversion rate from a regular website inquiry, because they're more our ideal client. I hate that phrase, but that's the reality of it. They're more the couples that already love the Lake District. The amounts of times as well that people have just got engaged. And I had a chalkboard at the gates back in the day, because it was in keeping with my tea room. Getting married, it said, getting married with a question mark. You can get married here. We do weddings for this, that, and the other. And they'd walk down literally from the caves, having just got engaged, and gone, oh, yes, we are.
Look,
this is meant to be.
Married.
So people that get engaged in the Lake District and then find us, people that get engaged by the lake, up the hill, but also people that, you know, have got a romantic connection with the Lake District. A lot of people that perhaps, I suppose, the northwest, northeast, 2-hour radius around us, they're the kinds of people that have been coming to the Lake District perhaps all their life because the parents did.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always that catchment as well. There's always an affinity to the Lake District, either from one or other of the couple. So yeah, and then you get the people like, you know, you mentioned Sian and Emma on the video the other day, who had never heard of us, had never been to the Lake District, didn't know what an elopement wedding was, found us on the website, and then booked us from that. Never met them until the day they came for the wedding. And so they were just incredible. And they're more what kind of things are happening these days, because marketing has changed a lot.
Yes. And for those who are listening to this podcast after I've spoken to Caroline, I got very excited when I was scrolling my TikTok feed and up popped a video from Court Howe of two wonderful ladies who'd had their elopement wedding at Court Howe. And I think they'd cancelled their big fancy wedding, hadn't they, and decided to elope. And I immediately messaged Caroline and was like, I'm so excited, I've just seen this video. So if you are listening, definitely go and check out Court Howe on TikTok, because Caroline does an amazing job with that.
Oh, thank you. But yeah, that's a story that we're hearing a lot more of since COVID, particularly. I've been talking about eloping in my blogs pre-COVID a long time, about why people can empower themselves to do this and how it's about them, not the parents trying to relive their weddings. I know that parents are very proud of their children, but there's a lot of pressure, peer pressure on couples, and I can see it. And, you know, the times that we would get couples coming in that would be in floods of tears because they're so connected with the space and they so could feel they wanted the wedding here. Then they'd go home and then I'd get I'd think that's definitely going to book. And then the bride would email me really upset because they need a bigger space than we had to offer, because back in the day we used to do weddings for up to 80, would you believe? Then we reduced it to 70, 60, 50. But back then, sometimes that wasn't enough for some people. They wanted even more. I think this particular one, perhaps we were only doing weddings of 50 at the time. And she said that they needed more because her parents wanted to invite more people. And that the phrase came across to me, I didn't even know he had an Auntie Eileen. So you can imagine the conversation. So we called it the Auntie Eileen syndrome, of people being pressurized into inviting people they'd never even met, because the parents thought it was right that you can't not invite Auntie Eileen. So the Auntie Eileen syndrome came about, and I just started writing blogs about how, you know, this is your wedding, your day, you know, you should really take that on board. And yes, have conversations can be difficult. And I understand if you're not, you know, paying for your own wedding, you know, if you've got financial support from other people, it does make it difficult. But I did feel that a lot of younger people especially were sort of being coerced into something they really didn't want. And this particular bride just broke my heart. And so I started thinking about, you know, how can I help people? COVID was the best thing for that in a way, because it changed completely people's outlook. You know, it was either going to be no wedding or a wedding for 15 or a wedding for 30. And actually people started saying and lashing back, I suppose, to say, it's actually not what we want. This is what we want. We want to go away and do it on our own, or we want to go away with just 10 people. You know, I don't want a big flash wedding, and I don't want people watching me. I don't want people in the room that I've never even met. I don't want to be paying for all those people. We've got other things we want to be spending that money on. You know, we might be, particularly, obviously you get different demographics, don't you? So our age range of people, couples, are from 25 to 75.
Wow.
Equally spread. So our average is 40. So we're quite unique in that we're a very small, intimate wedding venue with exclusive use. And I suppose it's going to put off certain types. So we do get very young people, and not old people, just, you know, more experienced people through our doors, each with very, very different needs. But a lot of those still elope, some in secret, some not. Some because it's maybe more budgetary driven, some people more because it's privacy driven. They want the exclusive use. They don't want to be watched when they're saying their vows. lots of reasons. Sean and Emma were just, so I always get into conversations with couples, and we were on a Zoom chat just before their wedding, a few weeks before their wedding. And, quite often I'll say, so what brought you to find Coat How? And she said, well, to be honest, we'd got a wedding already booked in Kent, and it was for 100 people. 3 months down the line, we realised we weren't enjoying this. We were actually doing it for everybody else. We were basically providing a very large party for everybody else to enjoy, and we weren't enjoying the planning experience. We were getting more and more stressed about it. They also felt that they would have to babysit everybody in the room and make sure everybody was getting on. They would worry about the different factions of the families getting on. They also felt that it wasn't for them anymore. And their words to me were, we're just in love. We just want to get married. And we don't necessarily want to be paying for everybody else to have a lash up, shindig. So I said, oh, lovely. So what brought you to the Lake District then? Have you been before? No, never been. I was like, oh, okay. But she said it was on our bucket list. So we thought, she said, and I'd never heard of eloping. She didn't even know what an elopement was. She'd seen an advert on Facebook about an elopement wedding. And it wasn't our advert, but she said to her partner, I think it was Emma that said it to Sean, hey, how about we elope? And it started out as a joke. Let's just elope. That's how it started. And a few weeks later, did a bit of research, realised what an elopement wedding was, realised that actually it's not that uncommon. And yes, it's okay to do that. Then she researched elopement weddings in the Lake District. Boom, found us, looked at the website, looked at the pictures. She said everybody looked happy and everybody looked normal. And this is something that people say to me. They're normal people. They look like me. And this is really important as part of my marketing. We like to put, because there's always that question, do you put people on your marketing or not? Do you put a bride on? Do you just do an empty venue? Do you let people imagine? So I think it's really important to show a wide demographic, the real people that we get. So I blog a lot about real weddings and show their actual wedding photos so that people see a wider demographic of people get married and the choices that they made, so that we can show elopement weddings next to full weekend weddings, weddings for 2 people or weddings for 24 people, lots of different scope. So she felt comfortable that it was the kind of place that she wanted and the people looked like normal people and not models or anything sort of contrived. It looked real. And so she said that was it. She got in touch and she booked. And true enough, although I'd met them on Zoom, for our second call was a Zoom call, the day I met them was the only day I've actually met them. So they came up for their elopement wedding and were very happy just to talk to camera, just to do that. So I'd only done it the once. I've never done it with people before, but I just felt a real connection to them. And I thought their story just needs to be told, because it will really help other couples who are teetering on the edge. And then it's got me blogging and doing vlogs. So I'm doing that more now on YouTube about the reasons why people elope, but also what options are out there and what do you have to do to get married? What are the legal obligations? How do you start doing weddings? So I just think now's the time really to start putting out a bit more information about, how you go about arranging a wedding. So I can help people whether or not they choose Coat How or not. Hopefully, they'll sort of take a look at those videos and glean something from it, and hopefully it'll help other people.
Yeah, and elopement weddings, I think, are maybe they're a little bit more common to hear of in the north, because we've had the old adage for years and years and years: if you're going to elope, you go up to Gretna Green, and that's from like back in the day when the blacksmith used to marry you in the anvil, and you might not want to do that, but Coat How is so beautiful, and you're in such a beautiful location as well, aren't you?
Yes, absolutely. I always say to people, it's like a little bit of heaven, a little bit of paradise. It's like a hidden gem. And I always think of it, particularly during COVID, as that little safe oasis. So we've got a very high spot of ground overlooking the Rydal Valley, and we're very much in the very centre of the Lake District. Yet we're quite secluded and surrounded by beautiful natural scenery. So you don't see any other houses or anybody else other than the walkers down in the field. But you're looking down on them, and almost from a sort of a lovely sort of, viewpoint, sort of looking down, watching the world go by, but in your own little private bubble. And so you've got wonderful, wonderful views 360. So it is an amazing space, and we're very, very, very fortunate, you know, to have those kinds of views. So, you know, when it was a B&B, I used to feel, you know, people don't really take full advantage of these grounds, of these views, because people would come to see us and, you know, they'd turn up 3 times a year and say, hey, Caroline, we're back again, because you know what? We sleep really well at Coat Howe. It's like silent and it's black, pitch black, and it's lovely. We're coming back again because he only sleeps when he comes here, kind of thing. And those people would be lovely. You'd see them at breakfast. They'd be out all day on the fells. They'd come home, have a lovely bath, and then they'd go out for a meal, but they would never sit in the gardens or the grounds and really take it in. And it was at that point I thought, you know what, people need to experience a bit of what we experience, you know, when we've got time out and we're sitting in the garden watching the red squirrel or the buzzard above or the deer, you know, just to sit back with a little glass of something nice in the evenings, watching all that happen, or sit in the gazebo, even when it's raining, watching the rain chain, you know, and just watching things happen. It's wonderful. So people that do come here, they come here and they're experiencing that. And I suppose it's me sharing part of what it's like to live here, you know. And I say to people, you know, you walk down that drive hand in hand like you own the place. You know, I'm giving you this for the day, and that's how it is. You're part of the family. It's your day. I will be in the background and I will be serving you, looking after you. And any potential opportunity that I see to, you know, flex your wedding or, you know, make it a bit different, work with the weather or whatever, I can see an opportunity, then I'll say, oh, maybe you need to be here or there. So planning around a home that I've lived in for the last 18 years is easy to me. I know where you need to be at different times of day to catch the sunlight here or there. You know, we always work with the sunset. So I'll always plan my weddings around when we're going to get the best light. You know, lots of things to think about. And I work with all the local accommodation providers and restaurants, recommending people, hairdressers, photographers. So it's a whole industry, isn't it, of fantastic professionals. And we've got so many fantastic creatives. It's wonderful to work with them. So I find it all just amazing, listening to people's stories, asking them what they want, what they don't want, getting inside their minds as to their personality, how they feel, and then making suggestions, you know, because I love switching things around and doing things perhaps you shouldn't do in some respects. I'm a bit of a rebel, I suppose. And I've been married twice, I hasten to add. So I always say to people, I'm very experienced at weddings. My first wedding was a Catholic church wedding, funded by my parents, with a reception in a local, you know, hotel. My second wedding was in a stately home in Nottingham, where we only went for the ceremony, and we had a marquee wedding in our garden to finish. But we had the registrars, it was a civil ceremony, and we had the registrars attend. And basically, I didn't want them to say anything because we were very much into, I don't know what you call it, paganism or whatever, but humanist kind of things. My partner was, as you can imagine, at the time. So he was into the organics, the ecos and everything else. And so it was a case of, do you actually need to say anything? Because I didn't want that repeat after me. You know, you do this, you do that. And they explained to me that technically, no, they didn't need to say anything. And I thought, great, don't say anything. Can we say our vows to each other? Provided you say this, this, and this, yes, you can. So I'm always questioning things. And I wanted everybody and the children to all be involved, bringing something to the table, saying a little poem about a different piece of flower or putting it into a wreath, saying a little something. And then we conducted our own vows to each other. And then we were married, because a marriage is a spoken vow. You don't actually need a registrar to say a word. You just need them to witness it along with your 2 witnesses, and then sign that you've vowed to each other that you marry each other. So that's exactly what we did. So I often say this to people, you know, you can do what you want within reason. You don't have to go down this set route. And so I think giving people too much choice doesn't work for some people. But also, if I can understand somebody and get inside their head a little bit, then I can sort of think about how I might create that wedding for them to make it a little bit different and to make it more akin to what they want. And of course, we do humanist, celebrant-led weddings as well as registrar weddings. However, the majority of people, of course, want that piece of certificate, don't they? The marriage certificate. So there are lots of ways of crafting weddings, and it's so creative. I love it. So
Sounds like you never have a boring day at work.
Never.
Never.
There's always something to do. And I switch between, the boring stuff, the more creative stuff. I do the website still, my own website. I do all my marketing myself, all the social media. We don't do anything. We don't outsource anything anymore. So everything's done in-house. So yes, I enjoy it. There's always creativity going on, creating videos, editing. So a bit like you, Eve. Yeah.
Never a dull moment.
Yes.
So if you had to distill your business ethos down into one phrase, what would it be?
Ooh, nice one. I've got a few.
Okay.
And probably one of them's not appropriate. It's to do with my mantra, my customer service, which is you can have whatever you want, provided I've priced it right. And it works.
I think that sounds very sensible. That is a very sensible business ethos.
But I couldn't possibly put that out there, could I?
It's out there in the universe now. Very sensible. I think that's a brilliant business ethos. That's one of my favourite ones I've heard.
Yes, you can have whatever you want. If I don't think it'll work, then I will be very, very diplomatic in explaining why I'm not going to do it, because it would affect the quality of your wedding.
Delivering the bad news with a smile on your face.
Absolutely. And being honest, I think. So my biggest thing is I cannot abide. And I have no patience whatsoever for somebody who can't tell it how it is, who isn't straight with me. I'm very, very straight, too straight sometimes and too abrupt, I'm told, because I don't mince my words, and I'm not as good as my bosses were back in the day. I never will be at delivering that bad news with a smile on my face. However, I will face it, and I will always tell the truth. No matter how slippery it makes me feel, or how cringy, or how much I don't want to do it, because I think some difficult decisions sometimes you can't escape, and some things you have to deliver. And I think you have to be tough, but actually it shows on my face. I'm one of those people that can't lie at all. It's all over my face. I'm an open book, and so I don't even try to lie. And if I'm not happy about something, you can tell by the look on my face. It shows. So
yes. I've been told that if my mouth doesn't say it, my face will.
Exactly the same.
Yeah, so I understand your fly on that one. Yeah, you can't help it. And you think you've got an amazing poker face, and apparently I haven't. So we're kindred spirits on that one, which leads me on nicely to my next question. So what are the 3 non-negotiable behaviours of people that work with you? Whether that be a bride, or that be one of your local producers that you refer to, or your partner who helps you. What are your 3 non-negotiable behaviours?
Well, number 1, we've already discussed. Honesty, punctuality, and ignorance.
Ignorance. Okay.
That comes from the couples. Ghosting. So I will tolerate to a certain extent, and I will nurture delightfully. However, your card will be marked, and I have a very simple system. And if you get a red mark, then you don't come back.
Oh, right.
Yes. So I'm very, very principled, I suppose. And I'm very, very black and white. I'm too soft in a way, but so I have to mark things up and remember, because I'm very quick to forget and very quick to move on. And so I've learned my gut instinct is usually right. And sometimes I'm too lenient, or sometimes I give too much, but actually you sometimes regret that. And looking back, wherever you've ever had problems in your life, you right from the start, you questioned it at the time, you let it go, and then you always live to regret it. So it's always those ones where you go, I should have stuck to my guns. And that's easier said than done. It's easy to do now, a lot easier, because I'm a lot braver. I've learned a lot. Back in the day, when you first start out and you've got no weddings on your books and you're desperate for anything you can get, you're very much a yes person. Then with the years, you learn what works, what doesn't work. And then you learn actually that it's a two-way thing. It's not just about them, it's about our experience as well, because this is our lifestyle as well as our business. And actually sometimes things just, we won't give on certain things. And so I tend to find now that I blog more about my opinion, I tend to attract the people that respect that opinion, respect this space, respect us, our home, and understand what we do, because we're not a conventional wedding venue in a lot of ways, are we? We're very much a private wedding venue that specializes just in weddings. We're not, say, a hotel or any other kind of place that their first business is accommodation and they do weddings as a part of that business or an aside to it. Weddings is everything I do and only what I do. And I've learned now that I don't need to be a yes person to everything, because not that I can pick and choose, but when people come to visit me for a show round, for example, I'm now a bit prouder and a bit more, I suppose, experienced. And also it's a two-way thing. They're not coming to check out whether they're going to buy from me. They're also coming to check out whether I'm going to sell to them. Do I want them to come to my home and have a wedding here? You know, so it was almost like Steve stopped me from doing this, but I wanted to not have an inquiry form. I wanted to have an application form. So it's a different way around thinking about it, isn't it? So the people that we get, that we really gel with, that are really, really fabulous, totally trust me and work with me. Do you know what I mean? They're not bridezillas, if you like. We don't get bridezillas.
I was just wondering if you got bridezillas or if you knocked those on the head.
Used to, but now I don't, because I tend to, don't attract them anymore because of my blogs and the things that I put out on socials. And B, I think, I've sort of, my process, if you like, my application process means that if I get a bad feeling about somebody, it's usually right. And I have to stick to that, and I stick to my gut. And if I feel that something's not right and that you're fighting all the time and it's a square peg round hole situation, it's usually telling me that actually that's going to be hard work. That it doesn't have to be hard work. Don't get me wrong, I work really hard and I'm not shy of hard work, but actually it's having that, you know, it's about having the confidence to say no. Actually, I don't think Coat Howe's right for you. And that is what I say to people if I feel that they're not getting it. So I think that is one of my biggest lessons learned, I think. And I think it just comes with experience and bravery.
Yeah. So if you get a bad feeling about somebody or a bride or a groom and you think, actually, I don't think this is right for you, do you ever have bad feelings about couples where you think you two shouldn't be getting married?
Ooh, very tricky one. Generally not, because they're always in the best behaviour when they come here, because they're all loved up, aren't they, and looking at a wedding venue.
Yes.
You do see very different relationships during the ceremony. So you do see people, you see a lot of humour in some relationships, and you see lots of different personalities. And you see some weddings where you just go, oh my word, they are just so made for each other. You can't tell, you know, you couldn't say, oh gosh, what are they doing together?
Yeah.
Because you can't really tell on a wedding day, but you can definitely tell those that gel. You can definitely see those that have actually got a right spark. And even the registrars comment on it. You know, we see so many weddings, but you just know by the way people look at each other, by the way they are. And, you know, you've already given her 4 kisses and we haven't said you can kiss the bride yet. You know, all of those, and you have all those lovely moments. And so you could just tell when people are just so excited. A lot of it as well is nerves on the day. So you've got to account for that. A lot of people are not necessarily themselves, which is why a lot of people elope these days, because a lot of people that are telling me, oh, I don't want people watching me doing all of that. And actually, the more I've thought about it and the more I see it, you can tell and you can see that when people are eloping, and there's only us two as witnesses and the 2 registrars and the couple, there's definitely more sentiment on show. And I think they're more sincerely themselves when they know it's about themselves, because they can look at each other and genuinely convey those words to each other. Whereas I think when it's a bigger wedding, not for everybody, don't get me wrong, so there's no, you know, one size fits all here, but just through observations, you can see that sometimes maybe having 50 eyes pairs of eyes on your back watching you. They're more concerned about not fluffing the words, and actually they're not listening. They're repeating, but then it's not going in. It's not, the connection isn't the same, shall I say, for some people.
Yeah.
And so now people are starting to tell me this back to me. And then you know that they're the kind of people that are the right people that should be eloping. Some people still don't know. But, you know, this year, over 50% of our inquiries are for elopement weddings. That's huge. It's a huge shift in the last 5 years.
Yeah,
you know, we've been doing elopements since way before COVID, but COVID's definitely accelerated that market, and people now feeling like that's definitely more what I want to do, because I want to go traveling or put money into a house or do other things. And now it's totally the way people are thinking. And yes, they could have a party, you know, when they go back home, but it makes it ideal, doesn't it, for, you know, a destination wedding to have a little elopement. So
absolutely. So my next question is, in your opinion, what is your superpower?
What is my superpower? Oh, I don't know. What would be my superpower? I don't know. It's a difficult one. I think I've been called a wedding angel in the past by a lovely couple who got married about 6 years ago. And then after that, because I talked about it on one of my blogs, another couple said, "You're not an angel, you're a goddess." So I don't know what they think that encompasses, but basically just a wedding goddess is just somebody that just makes everything right, whether it's fixing, you know, a jacket, stitching a bride into a dress, fixing a buckle on a shoe, fixing a bouquet, doing whatever. But I think sort of being everywhere all at once. Great film. A little bit like that. That's how I feel sometimes, that I need 10 of me. But I suppose that's it. Seeing it, feeling it, envisaging it. I know what's going to happen, kind of thing. You can preempt a lot of stuff, yeah? You can preempt a lot of stuff. And actually just preempting it and talking about it, taking away the nerves, taking away the possibilities. Pre-planning. I haven't got OCD, but I like to make sure that everything's in place.
Yeah.
You've had so much experience that you just know where that's going to go. So it's kind of, and that's where the honesty comes in and the diplomacy sometimes.
There's probably not a lot that you haven't seen before.
Probably not.
So what is the most common misconception of you, and what would you say to set it straight? You could also say the most common misconception of weddings.
What's the most common misconception of me? I don't know. That's a really difficult one, Eve. I don't know how people perceive me, I guess. I don't know. A lot of people that come to meet me think that they already know me, that I'm a celebrity because they've watched all the videos, and I feel a little bit humbled by that. Because actually, I'm probably a lot more sensitive than people imagine. So this exterior is usually often there, and a lot of people in a lot of traits and personalities. I'm a typical Leo, a gregarious, the external face with a very, very soft middle, very sensitive, and more sensitive probably than people imagine. Which can be a good thing and a bad thing, in that I can put myself into situations and empathize with a lot of people, but also I get very, very affected by stuff. And so I have to be very, very level-headed and very much, you know, don't let things affect me too much. So imposter syndrome, know all about that, don't we? Everybody
yes, we do
that these days. And you know, how much have we learned over the last few years about mental health, which is really helpful. So, you know, things that you always used to keep to yourself, you always used to think it was only you feeling these things, you know, and a lot of people feel lots of things, don't they, now, and are happier to talk about it. It makes it more normal. So I always think I was a very, very sensitive soul. As a child, whenever confrontation would happen, I was brought up with 2 big brothers and a little sister, one of 4. You know, my way out of it was to fight, because if I didn't fight my way out of a situation, I'd burst into tears, and I didn't want to burst into tears because I would be embarrassed. So I'd fight. People got me wrong because they thought I was just thug or trouble.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't that. It was a way of covering up what I felt was a weakness, and I didn't want to show that weakness.
Mm-hmm. So with that in mind, what would you tell your teenage self?
Interesting. Probably well, back in the 80s, it was very difficult, wasn't it, to react? I think tell myself it's okay, to show weakness and to cry, and that you don't necessarily have to always be strong. It's okay to show your emotion. I think I just felt like I had to be strong and look after everybody. And that's what I still do. I still take it all on board and look after everyone. So I suppose, not to be embarrassed by how you feel, that feelings are normal. We always had to put this bravado on, especially through school and everything else. You had to be, and I was never the popular one in school. I never hung around I never wanted to be part of a gang. I was happy to just do my own thing and drift from one gang to another. I never had an allegiance to anyone through school. And I suppose that was okay. Yeah, at the time I thought it wasn't. I thought I wasn't normal, but perhaps I was. I just didn't really. I'm very, very honest. And if I thought somebody was a bit of a bullshitter, I couldn't just get on with them. I'd just tell them that I didn't really. So I didn't really, I wasn't awful with people.
You were just straight up.
Yeah, and I wouldn't respect them, or I couldn't be their friend if I felt like they were two-faced. There was a lot of two-facedness, wasn't there, when you were young girls in schools, and a lot of bullying, and I couldn't abide it. I used to stick up for the boys. I used to come home with black eyes because I'd been punched instead of a boy being punched. Oh gosh, these Catholic schools were quite
tough.
Yes. No, I did my O levels. I did a very, very good education. I couldn't stand the underdog being bullied. I couldn't stand people being talked about. I couldn't stand stuff like that. So I could never really be a close friend to somebody that I'd seen do something that I didn't respect. So I'd always keep them at arm's length. I'd always clock it and say, well, I get you. I know what you're doing. I know what you're doing. And I will make my way through school. But I didn't really need these people. My best friend was at the school next door. She was at the grammar school. So we would just meet up after school and go to her house, my house, or whatever, and make up dance routines to David Bowie.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Sometimes you miss school, don't you? Maybe it's missing finishing at 3:00 and going home and making up dance routines, because we can't do, well, we probably can do that now, but maybe in my 30s it might be a bit odd.
Yeah.
But so my next question is always one that stumps everybody. So if it takes you a little bit of time to answer, that's absolutely fine.
Well, I've been stumped a few times already, so it's okay. I never really think about myself. I've never really sort of had any time to think about these things. So,
well, it's been wonderful that you have. But if there was a movie to be made about your life, what would it be called, and which actor or actress would play you?
Okay. This will be inspired by, what was it that I used to love? Oh, gosh. Used to be on the TV when I was younger. A Woman of Substance. I was transfixed with this story. And it was about a entrepreneur. And I think it was based on the Laura Ashley story, making tea towels, printing tea towels on a kitchen table, that kind of stuff. And kind of coming from like a grassroots kind of background, but making it big. But also jet setting around the world and having a family, having a nanny, having a fantastic supportive husband, and be, an international success at doing something in the design world is what I wanted to be. A world-renowned designer, Fashion Week in New York and Paris. Me and my dreams.
Yeah, and now you have a beautiful wedding venue. So if there was going to be a biopic, what would it be called?
So Steve and I just laugh because everybody that comes here says, so it's a bit like Chateau, isn't it? So you two are sort of the angel and the dick of Escape to a Chateau kind of thing. What would it be called? I don't know. I have no idea, because I'm not not that great with words. What would we call it? Oh, I used to be likened to Superwoman when I was younger. The Superwoman, whatever her name was. She had long dark hair, and that's exactly how I used to look with my mullet in the when I was 18 years old. So maybe something along the lines of, not Superwoman, is it Wonder Woman? Something along those lines. So weddings with the Wonder Woman.
Wonder Woman's weddings.
Sounds like an internet www dot, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, there's your next website. Okay, so we've got some quick fire questions. So you just need to answer with your gut instinct, okay?
Yeah.
Phone or text?
Text.
Email or meeting?
Email.
Tea or coffee?
None. Oh, coffee. Decaf.
Coffee. Decaf. Beach holiday or skiing holiday?
Beach now. It used to be ski. I've changed a lot. Snapped my Achilles and need a knee replacement. So skiing is off.
Absolutely no. The après ski, yes. The
Yes,
actual
absolutely,
skiing,
definitely.
no.
Definitely, yes. So not really a beach holiday person either. I'm a bit of both. I like a bit of an adventure.
Adventure holiday. Okay. Dogs or cats?
Both. You can't see them, but there's one of each down here.
Sweet or savoury?
Both, you see. I'm not helpful, am I? I like it
Both.
all. I want it all.
I want
you
all.
See? This is all.
Everything, everywhere, all of the time.
And my dad used to say, bless him, he died a long time ago. My dad's been dead 25 years now. He died very young, at 57. But my signature tune, according to my father, was Queen's I Want It All and I Want It Now, which is exactly me.
I mean, why not? Absolutely, why not? So do you think that pineapple belongs on pizza?
Yes, definitely.
Yes.
And I've got one on the side and I eat it in the morning for breakfast too.
Pizza or pineapple?
Oh, sorry, pineapple.
There's nothing like cold pizza for breakfast. Now, every guest leaves a question for the next guest. So I will get one off you before we finish. But the question that's been left for you is, if there's one phrase that is constantly repeated in your mind to yourself, or a piece of advice, quote, or something similar that you refer back to, can you share it?
I have already shared it.
Remind us what it is.
You can have whatever you want, provided I price it right.
Perfect. That is absolutely brilliant. And
it just means that anything is possible.
Mm-hmm.
We just need to think it through, plan it properly, and price it right.
Mm-hmm.
If they want a helicopter ride, yes, we can get a price for anything, can't we? We can make an experience out of anything.
Mm-hmm.
My job is to make sure, A, it's feasible, B, it's doable, it's safe, can be done, and that I price it right. And that there's no, there's a price for everything, isn't there? We just have to make sure in business that we get it right. I was sick of doing so much work for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And now I don't get out of bed for nothing like I used to.
Mm-hmm.
It's took me all those years to get brave and to imagine, you can just build things. No, it's what you create. It's what you create, the added value, make sure you've got it right and be brave enough to value yourself and what you do. And so I think that's the main thing, really. Valuing yourself is very, very difficult when you're self-employed and you work very insularly. You're working on your own. You've not got a group of people around, which is why I think, chucking myself on as many courses or doing as many things as I can, mixing with other people and networking is really, really important.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that would be my key thing. Yeah. You can have whatever you want, so long as I've priced it right, meaning I've planned it right and priced it right and I can do it.
Yes.
So I never say no. I just put the right price on it, and that sometimes, more often than not, puts people off. So I don't ever have to say no.
Yeah.
So
and is there anything that you would like to say to anyone listening to this podcast, or any business owners, entrepreneurs, anyone thinking about coming to Court How? What thought would you like to leave them with?
I would like to say to anybody in any walk of life, dream big, dream high. If you can imagine yourself doing it, you will do it. If you don't imagine it enough, or you don't feel, you can do it or whatever, you're never going to do it. So I think you've got to imagine your path and go for it. And you can see yourself doing it means that you're going to do it. You're going to follow it, aren't you? Dream big and dream bigger than where you expect to be. And then you'll hopefully reach the stars. So my dad always used to encourage me to reach for the stars in anything and everything. So whatever I do, I will always try to do more than is necessary, in the hope that whatever the conclusion is, it's more than satisfied what that brief was or what that client wanted, or I will always try to over deliver. I never oversell, but I'll over deliver. And that way you always leave people with a lovely lasting memory of something they didn't expect, or more than they expected. So yeah, so I'm reasonable, I'm fair, I'm straightforward. And I think it's just, but always add a little bit of icing. So people believe in me and they trust in me. And I think it's a wonderful thing. And I'm very privileged. I feel very privileged to be able to host people's weddings and to be such an important part of that, And I think, that shows we connect, and all the people that I have here, we have fantastic relationships going forward. I have such a great following as well. I'm not a big following on my Instagram and my Facebook and everything, but my couples never leave me. They stay with me forever. Even the people, we spoke about my first wedding in 2013. She commented a couple of months ago on one of the Facebook posts, and and I'm just honoured that people never say, I'm going to stop following you now because I'm sick of hearing from Coat How. People are still genuinely interested in us, me and Steve, the family, because they're connected with us, and people still come back year on year and wave over the gate. They all come back for anniversaries and they all want to stay. They all want to come and, stay B&B and, big decisions, but we can't accommodate it all. So we have to draw the line at how much work we actually do and where we focus the work. But we've created some fantastic friends as well, who we do see on a personal level from these weddings, people that we stay in touch with and we visit. So, and they come here. So it's nice. And I've got people that have moved into the village. I've got local friends now that got married here, that dog sit and stuff. So yeah, connections just everywhere. So that's so nice that people stay in touch.
You really have created something so special. So thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for having me. I'm very honoured, and I can't wait to hear it.